It's possible the Mariners are done making big moves this winter, but we're going to keep Fan Fiction Friday going. Let's see what you guys came up with this week. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Friday, February 9th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnett for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, that's LOCKEDON, to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. This is Fan Fiction Friday, the show where you submit your Mariners trade ideas and we react to them. And we're going to start here with Connor. It's a 1-for-1 with the Detroit Tigers. Pitcher Alex Faedo for Jonathan Clase.
Not bad. I'm not a huge Clase fan, to be honest. So I definitely don't mind giving him up. I don't know what Detroit's motivation is, unless they really like Clase again. And he is kind of a polarizing prospect. So when you look at Clase, you're looking at probably 55, 60 raw power, 70 speed, but he's not a good center fielder. So he's probably a corner guy with below average in-game power and big time swing and miss. So he's going to be an interesting prospect. I think when you look at Faedo, it's an interesting arm, former first-round pick, I believe. And he's got a pretty good slider, which is something the Mariners, like to try and mess with. But the fastball has pretty much no value. It's a 92, 93 mile an hour fastball. So it's slider heavy. Now, the slider had a 41% whiff rate last year. The fastball had a 12% whiff rate. So this is pretty much a one-pitch pitcher, and there's just not a lot of ceiling here. So I'm not sure what the point is of him, because I don't know if he is even going to make the team. So to me, are you thinking maybe you can get him to start again, or what's the deal here? Because to me, this is just not enough upside to give up Clase. So it's fine, but doesn't really move the needle for me at all.
I think the idea here is if you want to start Brian Wu out in Double-A and just let him kind of ease his way into things after, blowing past his career high in innings last year, Faedo could be a solid bridge to get you to Wu eventually at some point down the road, where it's not automatically Emerson Hancock as your number 5. There's obviously value in having someone like that, and we've talked about that idea in the past, and you've talked a lot about Michael Lorenzen over the last couple of weeks for pretty much that role. But how valuable is that, and how valuable is Faedo specifically filling that role for you? Is that worth Clase? I'm not super high on Clase either. I have concerns about the hit tool. Again, despite his elite athleticism, he's not a good center fielder. So that caps his value a little bit as well for me. I wouldn't lose sleep over this. I'm not super excited to do it either, but if they did this, I would get it. So I think I'm at a 50 on this.
Yeah, it's just, through 96 innings last year. So we really sure that he's going to give you more innings than Wu can, or that he's even more stretched out than Wu is?
I guess it's more just about giving you another option, right? But how valuable is getting another option? Not a clear fit at the number 5, just another guy to kind of sift through. Is that worth Jonathan Clase to you?
To me, I'd honestly probably rather, and I don't know if the Mariners would do this because they still value club control, but I would rather trade, if I'm going to trade Clase for that guy, I'm going to go get somebody like Adrian Hauser, who's done it, who's been 140, 150 inning guy. I'm going to go get somebody like that instead of Faedo, who maybe could do it, but maybe can't. And so I just I don't know if there's enough there for me to move Clase. But yeah, if they did it, like I'd be like, okay, like I could see the merit in it. So yeah, I think I'd go 50. It's fine. Like it's not exciting, but it's certainly not a bad trade.
And I could see why the Tigers would like Clase and want to take a shot on him. Next trade here from Sean. Mariners receive Lane Thomas from the Nationals for Dominic Canzone. I don't think this is enough. I don't think the Nationals are doing this. They seem
I think
like
they should.
Yeah, I think they should consider it. I think it's a really interesting trade because it's club control, right? That's what's the driving force of this trade here. It's 2 years of Thomas for 6 of Canzone. You know, a lot of people believe in Dominic Canzone. Maybe the Nationals are one of those teams. It seems like they're going to try and hold on to Thomas as long as possible, and maybe try and flip him at the deadline this year and try to get a bigger return for him. Because I think they look at Thomas as someone that they're going to try and sell as like an all-star caliber outfielder, you know, to other teams, and they're going to want a package that reflects that. I don't think this package necessarily reflects that. I mean, it's not a package; it's just one player, but I don't know if Dominic Canzone necessarily reflects what they're going to be looking for Lane Thomas.
Yeah, there's also some performance risk with Lane Thomas. Last year was really the first year that he was a viable everyday type of player. In the past, he's just been kind of a lefty crusher, and it's like you have that guy. You know, you have the guy who's a part-time player, right? So you have to really believe that Thomas is an everyday player like he was last year. Now he has been once, which is one more time than Dom Canzone has, but it's 6 years of Dom Canzone for 2 years of a guy who, at the end of the day, is probably, you know, at best Tommy Pham. Like I can just go get Tommy Pham and keep Dom Canzone. Like I don't think Thomas brings anything to the table that the Mariners don't already have or can't go get. Unless you think that he is like a legit 125, 130 WRC plus everyday type of bat. And I don't think the Mariners do. And last I heard, this last summer, the asking price on Lane Thomas was pretty ridiculous. I heard somebody say that like it might have cost the Mariners like Woo, and that's obviously ridiculous. So
right,
we'll have to see what the price is, but I still like Thomas. I think he's a pretty good player, and I think he can help you. But I think that having Haniger on this roster, I think the lack of ability to kind of get him DH at bats, I don't see it. So unless you think that he's an everyday player, I don't think you make this deal. Like, why would you swap a potential everyday player for a proven part-time player? And I mean, not at 6 years to 2 years. So
right.
I think it's an interesting idea, certainly. And I definitely understand the thought process behind it. But for me, I don't think the Nationals would do this deal. And I'm not sure the Mariners would either. So it's
an
interesting idea.
The splits are not great for Thomas either. 153 WRC plus against lefties this past year, 91 against righties. I mean, not useless, right? But below league average. So again, that ties into what you're talking about. Is he actually an everyday player? Do you think he's an everyday player for you, or is he someone that you're going to have to play the matchups with? And again, while he's not useless against righties, there's a pretty big disparity though between his production against lefties and righties. So
right, and Thomas is making a little bit of money, so it's not like you're saving. You know, it's not like, well, he's making the minimum, so I don't have to spend $8 million on Tommy Pham. It's like, okay, well, you're probably saving, I don't know, $4 million. You know, instead of signing Pham, but you also get to keep Canzone. So would you rather have Thomas and $4 million or Canzone and Pham or Duvall or somebody like that?
Right.
So interesting deal. I don't think either side's that interested in it, though. I got to give it a 45, 40, somewhere in that
I'll give
range.
it a 40. Yeah, I'll give it a 40.
Not bad.
We'll go over a few more of your trades in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Ibotta. For many people, the new year means resolutions to save money. So stop shopping without getting anything in return. Start getting cash back on every purchase you make with Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $145 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the promo code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get back into your trades here on Fan Fiction Friday, Colby, is there something you want to talk about?
So yesterday, I believe it was, we surpassed the 10.7K mark on YouTube. We've seen some pretty fast growth this last month, thanks mostly to the Mariners doing things. But we still have some goals, and now they seem pretty attainable. So I think we're getting ready to gear up and do a little bit of a giveaway sometime next week. So stay tuned. I think Ty and I haven't nailed down all the details here yet, but I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think we're giving away maybe not as many prizes to as many people, but we're giving away a bigger prize, and you guys are going to play a role in determining how substantial the prize is. So we'll give you the details sometime next week, but yeah, stay tuned. On Monday, we'll probably announce our next giveaway, Monday or Tuesday of next week. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right. Quinn has a trade here. It's with the Marlins, and it's with a favorite target of yours, Colby. Jesús Sánchez for Jonathan Clase and Michael Morales. Man, you guys really want to trade Jonathan Clase today. What did Jonathan Clase do to you guys? All right, what do you think, Colby?
This was Quinn. Who sent this?
Quinn. Yeah.
Quinn knows ball. So yeah, interesting trade. Sanchez, if I'm remembering correctly, is Super 2. So you get him for 4 more years.
Okay.
Which makes me think that maybe this deal isn't enough. Sanchez is a guy who hits the ball very, very hard, which we know the Mariners like. He's got left-handed pull power, which fits well at T-Mobile Park. He also has some pop to the opposite field, so it's not just a dead pull profile. Pretty good athlete. He'll be fine in the outfield. He won't absolutely murder you. That's probably got us demonetized. So he's a good player who kind of had a breakout year. Brant Brown is here. Maybe he thinks that is something that can continue. But for all those reasons, because he's cheap, because he's controllable, like what incentive do the Marlins have to trade him? Probably not for Clase, right? The Marlins are having a weird off season. They haven't done anything. I don't think that's. I literally think they haven't done zero major moves this winter that come to mind. So,
do you think it could legitimately cost Terry Ford?
For Sanchez?
Yeah.
They could ask, but if that's the ask, I'm going okay, well, I assume then you're giving us Tanner Scott and Rogers on top of Sanchez. But yeah, I think they might ask. Sanchez is a guy who's pre-breakout, but he kind of did a half breakout. He's a guy who could really pop.
He was a 110 WRC plus guy this past year.
He's a guy
125 games played too. Like substantial sample size.
Right. So he's also only, I think, 26. So yeah, he's an interesting player. 1.7 WAR and 360 plate appearances. Like he's 2.5, 3-1 player. And you do get him for 4 years. So I just don't think this is enough. I think
No, I don't think so either. I honestly think that Harry Ford would be a fair ask.
maybe a bit steep, but if it's like Sanchez and like a bullpen arm that could help them, sure.
Yeah. Could it be?
Yeah, I think this is what
maybe
the
not
Marlins
Tanner.
got.
Maybe not Tanner Scott, but JT Chargois.
I mean, maybe like Sanchez, Chargois, and like a decent prospect or something like that.
Sure.
For Ford, but yeah, I think they'd ask a little bit more than this, or honestly, a lot more than this. I just don't know how much value Morales has in trade talks right now. And Clase, it's really hard to nail down the value because it does seem like there are teams out there who really like Clase. There are scouts out there who really like Clase, and there are just as many who don't know if he's even a big leaguer. So this is a really tough guy to evaluate. So
I think Clase is a big leaguer. I think it's just more like, is he actually an everyday player? Is he more of a utility, and not utility in terms of defensive versatility, just like, is he a guy that's more of a defensive replacement guy that you put on the base pass late in games and in hopes of getting a stolen base or two? Like, is that kind of what his role is, or is he actually going to be able to hit?
Well, that's the thing, is that the strikeouts are so extreme, at least they were last year, that there's a chance that he just can't hit enough to have a regular or even a semi-regular career in the big leagues.
Right.
He have to hit something. So the good news is for Clase fans is that he's still quite young. So there might honestly be very little incentive for the Mariners to trade Clase this winter, because if he comes out and he shows improvement, in the minors this year, then he might be worth more in July. So we'll see. I like the Sanchez idea. I don't know how the Marlins are going to value Clase. So it just makes it really hard to grade any of these Clase trades. So I would say like Sanchez is a really good target.
Yeah.
I think it costs semi-significantly more than this. Like I think you're probably trading somebody in the top 10. Like maybe this costs you Locklear and like Jeter Martinez or something like that.
Right.
So I'll give it a 40. I like the idea. I just think the valuation's a little bit off, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll go 35 or 40 on this.
Yeah.
Next trade here from Mudcat Grant, Devin Williams for Marcelo Perez, Dylan Moore, Axel Sanchez, and Ben Williamson.
20.
Yeah, that's not enough. There isn't a guy there. There isn't a headliner there. It's just a bunch of bulk, back end of the farm bulk.
Yeah, that's like a lot of guys ranked in the 20 to 35 range in the Mariners system for the best reliever in baseball, or one of them.
Yeah.
No chance. It's costing you Harry Ford. It's costing you Young.
Especially for 2 years of Devin Williams.
Right. It's going to cost you more than Santos. And this is honestly significantly less than you gave up for Santos. So, yeah. For Devin Williams, you're giving up a top 5 prospect at least. Heck, the Brewers might even ask for Brian Wu, and be well within their rights to do so. So,
agreed.
Yeah. Devin Williams is a fun idea that Ty and I have kind of kicked around, but again, it's like Ford, Locklear, and then a couple lottery tickets, something like that, I bet.
Yeah. Maybe Canzone. I think Canzone makes some sense for them.
Maybe
25. Yeah. It's not, I don't even know if it's a conversational starter.
It's not.
All right, we got a couple more of your trades coming up here in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. I'm sure a lot of us Seahawks fans are going to be hate watching the 49ers and cheering on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but the only thing I would love more than seeing the 49ers go home crying is winning some cold, hard cash on FanDuel. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers can join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Fan Fiction Friday. We got a couple more trades to go over. We're going to look at Udonis's trade here. Tyler McGill for Walter Ford, Ty Adcock, and Axel Sanchez. Yeah, I think this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And a similar idea to the Faedo thing where it's, getting another option to throw in there for the number 5 mix if you don't want to start Brian Wu out at the major league level right away. And I think that's fair comp for McGill. Yeah, who's probably not going to make the Mets roster.
The Mets are definitely a team to watch this spring, particularly on the starting pitching front, because they also have Adrian Hauser and David Peterson and Joey Lucchesi. Like, these are all guys that make some sense for the Mariners. And, obviously the prices all vary on these guys, but it's funny. I actually looked at McGill last night and threw it in the Slack channel as somebody that I would watch because there's some interesting things. And somebody, so I looked at a StatCast page, and Ty, you might be surprised to know this. Tyler McGill has excellent extension, 99th percentile.
You're an extension guy this offseason.
Apparently. Yeah. So, but he also, good slider last year, but the fastball really took a step back. But interestingly enough, the previous 2 years, his four-seamer was running like a 27 to 29% whiff rate. That's really good for a four-seam fastball. And the slider was, so he does have, potentially 2, plus pitches, at least 2 plus pitch shapes. And, he just wasn't very good last year. He wasn't awful, but he wasn't very good. So yeah, he might be a guy who the Mets look at and say, we have this guy and we can probably do a little bit better. Or we can trade this guy and get better somewhere else. So, or maybe they just want the 40-man spot. Who knows? The Mets are definitely a team to watch this spring because they could be one of the teams that's like, hey, you know what? Jordan Montgomery's floating around out here. Let's just go sign Jordan Montgomery. Why not? So, yeah, I think maybe it costs a little bit more. What was the package again exactly, Ty?
Let's pull it up here. Tyler McGill for Walter Ford, Ty Adcock, and Axel Sanchez.
Probably need something a little better than Adcock. But I like that you're kind of going with bulk upside on this, but with the ceiling or with the floor of like flames out in Double-A.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's about right. I think it's probably something like Ford. Maybe it's like Ford and Ashton Izzy, and then maybe like Axel Sanchez, something like that. Or it's a little bit, it's like Sanchez and, honestly, this is where a spot like for Jonathan Clase might make sense. So yeah, pretty good. Interesting arm.
I would say 60.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was going to say 50, but look at Ty, the big spender over here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea. I don't have a good feel for the cost though, but do watch the Mets this spring because they're going to have probably 2 or 3 guys that are going to look pretty appealing to the Mariners as their number 5 starter if they want to push Wu down to the minors.
Last trade here from Daisy and the Dingo. Graham Pauley for Gabe Spire. Graham Pauley, for those that don't know, third base prospect in the Padres system. What do you think?
What's the point for the Padres? Now, do the Padres think they can contend this year? Maybe they do.
Yeah.
And I think they probably could for a wild card. Some things have to break their way, but they've lost a lot of talent, and yet they still pretty talented team. I think they'll be in the wild card mix. So maybe is Spire enough to give up Paulie, who's just been crushing it in the minors this year and is probably within 6 to 12 months of being big league ready? Probably not. I don't think so, at least. And from the Mariners side of things, you want to give away more from your bullpen to get a player who might help you in 6 to 12 months. What's the incentive there? Like I understand that the Mariners feel like they have, really fortified the bullpen, and in a lot of ways they have. And I understand that they think they've done a good job of kind of building the middle of that bullpen. And in a lot of ways they have. They have a lot of options for the middle inning type of guys. But interestingly enough, the Mariners seem to think of Gabe Spire as more of a higher leverage guy, particularly against lefties. So if that's the case, like, how do they replace that role without spending significant money? Because they don't have money. Well, you guys know the caveats by now.
Right.
So I don't know if this makes sense for the Padres. I don't know if this
Yeah.
makes sense for the Mariners. If you just look at these two in a vacuum, kind of a lottery ticket, bat only third base type who's put up really good numbers versus a controllable, solid reliever with good stuff, swing and miss stuff, makes sense. But when you add the teams into it, like, what's the incentive for the Mariners to trade their best left-handed reliever, like by far, and one that they apparently consider to be part of the high leverage mix, according to Hollander?
Well,
What's
the
the
thing
point
too?
of-
Well, and with Pauly is like he only has 20 games at AA.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, is he even going to be a factor in 2024? If I'm the Mariners, why? I mean, it's in a vacuum, really good value for the Mariners trading a mid leverage reliever, for potentially an everyday bat that could impact you in at least 2025, or at least starting in 2025. But why do this now?
Yeah, it's bad timing. Like,
Yeah.
you get into July and you're out of it, and the Padres are in it. Revisit this, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't see the point for the Mariners.
Yeah.
And like I said, even for the Padres, it's pretty.
Well,
like-
is that even enough for them to? Because it's not like they have a log jam right now that they need to address. It's not like Pauly is like taking up a spot on their 40 man at the moment, and they have to
Right.
get rid of that spot. There really is no reason for them to trade Pauly, and I don't think Spire is. All due respect to Gabe Spire, but like I don't know if a mid leverage reliever, like I said, is worth them trading someone like Pauly for right now.
Mhm. Yeah, Spire might be a guy who's worth a lot more in July than he is right now, because he was good last year. I don't think
He was. Yeah. One of the better lefty relievers in all of baseball.
Yeah, like he was very good, but he did it once. Like, he's done it once in his career. He's still just a reliever, so you have to be careful when trading for guys like this. I mean, 64 strikeouts in 54 innings is good. It's not elite. It's not great, but it's good, and he didn't walk guys. And so the Mariners trust him. Like, there are teams out there who would love to have Gabe Spire and add him to the middle of their bullpen. Are the Padres one of them? And are they doing it for Pauly? I don't think so. And again, I don't think the Mariners can actually replace what Spire brings to the table right now based on what they have on hand. So
Right.
you kind of have to go out and replace Spire now to add a guy to AA who you hope might be able to impact you later this year, but probably not until next year.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a ton of sense.
All right. That is going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.